So thank you all for joining us. I'm Allison Clemens, and I want to welcome you to today's webinar on empowering justice-involved youth leaders. Before we get started, I just want to go through a couple housekeeping items. So when you enter the conference, please make sure that you've enabled your audio. You have the option of joining the discussion via telephone or using your computer speakers and microphone. We've found that by dialing in via phone, you'll find the audio is better. And you can change that setting in the audio panel to the right of your screen. Because we have a bunch of folks on today's webinar, everyone is currently muted just to ensure we don't have a lot of background noise. But as appropriate, when we move to the question and answer section, we'll be sure to call on folks. So you can either raise your hand in the attendee section. There's a little button. You can raise your hand. Or you can put your question in the chat box, and we can call those out then. And just let us know when you have a question. We'll be sure to make sure folks on the webinar. So with that, I'm actually going to turn it over to Jeree Thomas, and I will let her introduce all of today's fabulous speakers. So let me make sure, Jeree, you're unmuted, and we should be good to go.
All right, can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Oh, great. All right. Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jeree Thomas. I'm the Policy Director with the Campaign for Youth Justice in DC, and I'm a 2015 Youth Justice Leadership Institute Fellow with the National Juvenile Justice Network. We are also known as YJLI. And so I'm going to provide just a very brief overview of the Youth Justice Leadership Institute Toolkit, which was entitled Empowering Justice-Involved Youth Leaders. And then I'm going to turn it over to our really incredible presenters to introduce themselves, their work, and to share their insight on how adult allies and nonprofit organizations as a whole can better support and center in their campaigns and organizations the leadership of youth and young adults who've had contact with the justice system. So about 2 years ago, alumni of the Youth Justice Leadership Institute began to look into this issue. We started researching the topic and talking and getting feedback from youth and young adult leaders at the NJJN Forum, and then surveying NJJN members about how their organizations are trying to move beyond just acknowledging the importance of youth voice in this work to really taking action to ensure that there are opportunities for young people to be actively engaged in campaign and organizational decision making. And so we distilled from our research 4 really simple, basic principles around empowering youth leaders that you see on your screen there. And we, to be clear, we use the word empowerment to specifically emphasize the importance of adult allies relinquishing power, i.e. financial resources and support, to youth and young adult leaders in order to do this work. So as you can see, the principles are to protect youth leaders, and that means looking both internally and externally and reviewing how organizations can systemically, even if unintentionally, take advantage of youth leaders if they're not building those authentic relationships to make sure that young people are supported in this work. It's, support youth leaders, so actively encourage professional development, provide holistic support. Don't just think about the resources necessary for that young person to be engaged in the campaign, but think broadly about what their needs are and make sure that there are supports if that young person needs support around housing, food, clothing, transportation. The third principle, recruiting youth leaders, the emphasis there is to make sure that you're recruiting a broad array of young people who have lots of different experiences and can bring that great experience and expertise to identifying problems and providing real solutions to the issues we're seeing in the justice system. And then finally, sustain youth leaders. So no one in our field of work is immune to burnout. And so it's really critical that adult allies help young people to say no and utilize self care and self healing practices. And we need to make sure that when a young person says they need a break from this work or they want to pursue other work, that we're also there to support and sustain them in that. And so, with that framework, I'd like to turn it over to our wonderful presenters. If you all could take just a couple of minutes to introduce yourself, your work, and then we will start getting into specific questions. We have a couple of questions, but we will also have enough time for audience questions. So please do, as Allison mentioned, add your questions to the chat box. So I think we're going to start with Hernan. I'll turn it over to you.
Hi, everyone. So my name is Hernan Carvente Martinez. I am the National Youth Partnership Strategist at the Youth First Initiative. And what that means, as I always say, is that I get to work with amazing young people currently in 7 different states where Youth First is currently present. And most of my work has centered around encouraging adults and really supporting adults and making sure that young people are always at the table, that young people are leading conversations around not just justice reform, but just transformation of our juvenile justice system in general across the country. And I come to this work from the perspective of having been a young person who 6 years ago came out of the justice system at 20 years old and really seeking opportunities to not only thrive in the world, but just try to do things that were going to be helpful to myself, my daughter, my family, and my community. And realized that there were so many challenges in doing that. And for a period of time was a poster child of reform in New York City, and realized that I didn't want to be that, that I wanted more young people to be at the table. And so I made sure that in every position that I've held, in every place that I've been at, that I'm always encouraging more young people to be there, because I don't want to be that poster child, let alone allow other young people to be that, and really stick to the principles that have been outlined by Jerry earlier. So that's the work that I do right now, and I'm really happy to be here. So looking forward to the questions.
Oh, and Crystal, we'll turn it over to you.
Hi, everybody. Can you guys hear me? That's good. My name is Crystal Surya. I'm from New Jersey. I'm with the New Jersey Institute for Social Justice, working to close down the 2 youth prisons in New Jersey. So right now I run the youth portion of the Institute, and I'm really, training youth, giving them different skills to equip them to be in this field. And the way I really got into this kind of work is I'm a multi-system youth myself. I'm from the child welfare as well as the juvenile justice system. And, I'm always about giving youth their voice. I found my voice, a couple years ago, and it's been really impactful for me and the youth that I serve. So I'm always trying to help youth, get out of their shell, use their voice, utilize their voice, and most importantly, making sure that the adult partners that we're surrounded with are supporting them and utilizing that voice and helping them gain the skills. So I'm happy to be here. I know you guys will hear much more, but that's a little short synopsis about myself.
Thank you. Chelsea?
Hi, everybody. I'm Chelsea Ward. I am a community organizer of New Virginia Majority. I am in the process of creating a campaign that will launch in January on the school to prison pipeline, working towards the school budget and how money is allocated through that budget. I have been in the system myself. I started this work maybe 2 years after I came out of prison. And it's been a wonderful 6 years since I've been out, so that is amazing. And I have been working with youth that have gone through the same things that I've been going through, even in opening my own doors to be a support to them, to make sure they understand that just because you feel like you're alone, you're never alone. I always have your back. So that's what keeps me grounded into this work, and I never forget, and I always like stand beside them, because you always need somebody to stand beside you. The work doesn't work with one person, it works as a team. So yeah, excited to be here.
Thanks, Chelsea. And now I'll turn it over to Kim and Anthony.
Go ahead, Anthony. Hey, everybody. Hi. So I'm Anthony Robles. I'm a organizer with the Youth Justice Coalition. I'm somebody who's been impacted by I was first arrested at 12 or 13, and was arrested many times after that, and wrongfully put on a gang file, and that affected my. I tried to get into the military when I was 18, and I couldn't because of my juvenile convictions on my record. So um, and then I found my way to YJC later as an organizer, and just organizing and organizing against these issues about how the war on youth is specifically in LA County and in California has really it's helped me empower myself to defend myself when I'm either stopped by police or find myself in court or anything like that. I with the knowledge and the organizing that I've done, it's helped me defend myself better. And so here at YJC we have a high school, Free LA High School, where we have students who've been pushed out of the traditional high schools can get their high school diploma, and then we also have 6 campaigns that we're part of. One of them, Students Not Suspects, um, which is trying to get cops out of schools, trying to get more counselors into schools, use transformative justice and restorative justice in schools rather than suspensions and expulsions. And we're going to start a campaign or build a coalition with continuation school students, so they can have equity, so their schools can get through A through G requirements in California and things like that regular or traditional high schools have. The second is ending the war on youth, or no war on youth, which is um, primarily attacking the way that the war on gangs has affected youth of color. So we recently had a lawsuit against the city of Los Angeles, which we got close to 10,000 people off gang injunctions in the city of Los Angeles, and won some we won some state legislation regulating the cow gang gang file system. And then the third one is conditions of confinement. You can't get while in a cell, which is um, and trying to ending like extreme sentencing and juvenile LWOP, life without parole, and other state legislation that we worked on. The fourth one is community alternatives to 911, which and also the Stop Coalition, which we're coordinating a family-led statewide coalition of people who've lost loved ones to police violence, and we recently won some local and state legislation to help to increase police transparency and accountability. And then number 5 is the Alley for Youth campaign, which is trying to redirect 5% of law enforcement budget into a youth development department here in the city and the county of Los Angeles. And then 6 is closing youth prisons and building youth leaders in the No More Jails campaign, which we're trying to stop the expansion of the LA County Jail, it's a $3.5 billion jail expansion that they're working on right now, and also closing youth prisons, which I think in the last few years, LA County has closed more juvenile halls and probation camps, but just probation camps, and we're trying to close all of them and ultimately end youth incarceration in Los Angeles. So.
That's it. Just to add to what Anthony's saying, all of us at the YJC have been through the system, either detained, incarcerated, some deported. Many of us are family members also, and so it's a project, organization led by formerly incarcerated people and our families, including we have about 3,000 members inside the state prison system. And thank you, everybody. It's an honor to be with all of you today.
All right. Well, thank you all so much for those introductions. So appreciated hearing all the great work that you all are doing. So I have a couple of questions, but I'm looking really forward to hearing questions from the audience. So the first question, as you all can see on the screen, is why is it essential to have youth leadership and advocacy campaigns and organizations? And I was wondering, maybe Hernan, if you could kick us off with your thoughts on that question.
Sure. Sure. So as I mentioned earlier, I work at the Youth First Initiative, and just like the Youth Justice LA Coalition, we are doing work around closing youth prisons in 7 different states. And I think one of the beauties of working with young people in each of those campaigns in those 7 states has been that Adults oftentimes get caught up in just their sort of frame of thinking around how these issues should be talked about. And we fail to realize sometimes that young people bring a fresh perspective and or can bring a really impactful story to a conversation that is typically only held around numbers and statistics. Um, and typically does not include the actual lived experience of those who've actually experienced incarceration firsthand. And so I think it's essential to have youth leadership in these campaigns because it's an opportunity for us to hear from those who've been impacted directly. It's an opportunity to empower them, to really give them an opportunity to really lead the work that is happening on the ground, but more importantly, to keep us honest and to keep us in check in the work that we are doing, because oftentimes, we can go a little bit stray and just listen to what politics is guiding us to say, as opposed to actually thinking about our communities and our young people. So I really do think that it's essential for us to be accountable to the communities that we talk about. And so if we're talking about closing youth prisons without young people, then we're already doing a disservice to the young people that we're actively engaging. And so those are some of my original opinions.
Thanks. And I'm going to open it up. I don't know if other folks have additional responses to add to that.
Hi guys, Crystal back here. It's definitely, I was listening to what Hernan says, and one thing that me and Hernan talk about all the time, like, we can't talk about youth issues without the youth talking about their issues, right? So it's really important to be able to engage them as much as possible, in advocacy campaigns and other, things that we're doing, other conversations that their adult alumni are having, because they're really the experts. They're really the experts of what's going on. They're the ones that have lived through it, firsthand experience. And we could, adults, we could read data and read statistics and, but it's something different when we really have a youth who's gone through the experience at the table to talk about what's happening and what's not happening. And we're always talking about, building youth up, right? Giving them the skills in order for them not to touch the system in the first place. And it's really involving them in other conversations. Sometimes the adults are like, oh, well, they're not ready. Well, how are they going to get ready if we never even implement them in the conversation in the first place, right? It really takes practice for them to be at their fullest capability, and us as adults, and I'm still in the middle of like the adult youth kind of thing. So let's say us as adults, us as youth, I really don't know what I am, right? But I guess I could pick and choose what I want to be. So today I'm both. It's really up to, us adults to be able to give them that space that they could learn and they could develop. Because we're not going to be around for forever. Me and Hernan talk about all the time. I'm only 25, but in another 2 years or so, Crystal can't be the youth, right? I really need to be able to have other youth at the table to be able to lead the same conversations that I'm leading right now. So it's really essential because, one, they're the future. They're the ones that know the issues that are going on. And we need to help them develop the skills to be able to get them where we are and where our adult alumni are as well.
Absolutely. Kenny?
I would just add to that, and everything has to say too. There's other reasons why young people have always been at the forefront of all social justice movements, and we fail to involve young people at our own peril. If we really claim to want the demands, the forceful and essential demands to be met, or the dismantling of youth incarceration and the juvenile and criminal justice systems, then we can't do that without young people leading the movements. That's historical, so it would be a mistake to think we could do things otherwise. Young people have courage where adults fail. They have less to lose and more to gain. Young people have an analysis. They're more than just their own story. They have their own analysis and their own evaluation of what's needed as well as what's going on. They see through the system where adults are oftentimes, especially if adults haven't been in the system themselves, are oftentimes misguided by the ways policies make things look prettier than they are, or the way that a system will come through and paint its walls and tell young people not to talk honestly right before an investigation by federal or state government. Young people see through that. Young people have an honesty and a clarity that adults, unfortunately, as we get older, we lose oftentimes. And then most importantly, adults can have essential skills that are oftentimes neglected when we think of them in the work. So they're not just people to testify. They also can do their own direct action research. their own original analysis and their own original surveying. They engage in direct action and more forceful actions against the system, where adults oftentimes just want to do insider negotiation or legislation, and we need direct action in order to win big. You need that push from the community to win big. And young people are also, I think, better leaders oftentimes. I think as people get older, they tend to put organizational individual identities and fame and fortune ahead of a movement identity, and a movement identity is how we're going to win. So for all those reasons, it's essential that we involve young people and their families in this work.
And I would just add that youth will lead the youth. Like a young person is gonna listen to another young person before they'll listen to an adult who might not understand the issues that they're going through. And then the second thing, Crystal kind of pretty much touched on it, is that we should be preparing youth to take our places, to take our positions when we become. I'm 25 as well, so I'm not gonna be a youth forever. Next year I'm technically not a youth no more. So we should be developing youth to take our places, and if we're not developing leadership skills, then that's to the detriment of the entire movement, because who's gonna take our place? So.
Thank you. That was great. That was great. Any other responses before we go to the second question? All right. So the second question is, what are the best ways to recruit youth? And Anthony, you kind of spoke to this a little bit with your response. And then what are sort of the worst ways? What should organizations stop doing? And then what should they be doing to recruit young people into this work?
Yeah, so we have a lot of different recruitment methods. I have one thing I was going to hold up. I don't know if people can see it, but we have a membership card that we hand out everywhere we go. Schools, jails, juvenile halls, the visiting lines to families, courts. We tend to be very strategic about where we do outreach. We know that if we go to jails, juvenile halls, courts, that 100% of the people there are going to be impacted by these issues. And if we do door-to-door outreach, which we tried sometimes, maybe 40% of the people won't even open their door to us. Maybe a bunch of them won't be home. And then those that open their door, maybe, everyone's impacted in some way by the system, but not necessarily fighting a court case right now. So that's one thing we really urge people, is to go to where young people really are that are most impacted by the juvenile justice system. Secondly, we go a lot to continuation schools, because most young people have been forced out. For most of us, we were forced out of school before we were first arrested, or about happened simultaneously. So continuation school is really important for us. We also give young people our card information. This is another example. I don't know if people can see. What's really essential to our cards, though, is the inside information, which is what to do when you're stopped by the police or ICE. What are the steps you should take, because that's valuable information that everybody can use. And then people tend to reach out to us when they do get in trouble, or having a court case or system of contact on the street. We try to use a lot of arts, so open mics, parties, events. Our space is open to anyone in the community that's doing similar work for free. So we have repasses, birthday parties, baby showers, and then we can use that as a way to reach the community in a larger scale. Anthony mentioned a high school here, a high school for young people who have been pushed out or coming home from lockups, real essential in our outreach for word of mouth, especially movement leaders drawing other movement leaders, young people drawing other young people. And then the last thing I would add is that it's a key question that we ask oftentimes is, who are the person that you go to when you're in trouble, to find out who are the natural leaders, whether it's family leaders, people inside the prison system, or people on the streets, who are the natural leaders in our communities. Because I think when the Board of Education or universities, whoever, look for leaders, they tend to look for those Board of Ed superstars, and those aren't oftentimes the people that are really leading the people out of their misery, out of their struggles. So that's one key way we use to reach out to people. And of course, social media, Instagram, Facebook, all that stuff too.
And I would just add ways where things that organizations should stop doing is having like separate meetings. Sometimes there's youth meetings and then like the adult meetings, and then that bifurcation really like puts a division in between the youth and the adults that are part of the organization. And a lot of times the ideas and plans that come out of the youth meetings or whatever aren't heard, or they're taken into consideration but then they're not implemented, and it creates like this hierarchical organization that youth really aren't leadership. It's just like performative. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
Thank you. I don't know if anyone else has a response to that question.
So, hear me?
So can you hear me?
Oh yeah, Chelsea?
Okay. So yeah. So one of the things that I think that organizations should be more mindful in doing is stop telling the youth what they need. They will tell you what they need. And then it's your job as a supportive system for them to help them find the resources that they need to be successful. If you step in their shoes and understand where they're coming from, then you'll be able to help them better. Another thing is the best way to recruit them is go where they are. I always go to basketball courts, I go to the parks, I go to wherever they are, and I go and hang out with them so they don't feel like, yes, because I'm almost 30. And I don't want them to think like, oh, she doesn't know what she's talking about, she's too old. So I go where they're at and I go hang out with them and do the things that they enjoy to do so that I can get them to understand, like, I understand, I'm with you, you can trust me, I'm here to support you. What do you want to do and how do you want to go about this? Yeah, other things organizations should stop doing is stop speaking for the youth. Stop speaking up when it's a place and this light is for youth to speak up and say something. Allow them to speak up. Stand behind them and support them from behind. Don't support them in front and say what you think that they would say instead of letting them say what they should say.
Thank you. And Crystal,
Yeah. So I think one of the best ways to recruit youth, and I think Anthony did touch on this, was utilize the other youth, right? Don't have the adult partners go out to try to recruit youth. I mean, yeah, that's useful, but it's really a lot more useful when they're hearing it from us. And I think one of the worst when it comes to recruitment, and just when working with youth in general, one thing that I would tell organizations to stop doing is stop thinking that you're like saving these youth, or stop thinking that this is the only thing they have going on. And just remember that, you know, when you're recruiting youth, you have to keep in mind that they have a life, they have problems, they have things that they're going through. So don't come in there and just be like, oh, we're going to recruit you, we're going to give you everything that we think you need, and then your life is just going to stop and it's going to revolve around this work, because that's not true. So I would say, you know, stop thinking that we're the end to all ends, and just remember that they do have a life. And sometimes us as their adult partners, adult, right? That we might have to tell them, like, you know, you have a life, like, you know, make sure you're doing self-care, you know, reminding them about their daily activities, going to school. You know, I run a youth council every other Thursdays, and one of my youth, when she first started school, she missed her first day to come to my youth council. And I'm like, whoa, no, you have to take care of what you have to take care of first, and this is second. And yes, we will always be here and we could do conference calls, there's other ways to keep you engaged, but you have to still go on with a productive, regular life, right? And not just forget about everything.
right. That's a great point. Oh, Hernan, did you have? Yeah.
Yeah, I think, everybody touched upon, I think everything else that I would have said. I think one of the other things to consider when recruiting young people is, particularly because I know there are organizations right now that are listening in that are not youth-led currently, or maybe never will be because of just the way that organizations are structured, to really think about how there might be internship positions or other places where in your organization you can create a space for young people to come in, with the recognition that not every young person wants to be an advocate or an organizer, that some of them do want to go on to become entrepreneurs or lead businesses, or really do something that is really outside of the context of youth justice. And so as we continue to think about the best way to recruit young people, also reminding ourselves to create multiple pathways for our young people to grow and thrive into positions that they want to go into, realizing that not all of them are going to, again, come into this space wanting to just do this work. And then to Crystal's point of having young people come in. One of the worst things, and one that we continue to do in this field, is we continue to bring young people, assuming that they can pay for everything that they are, being a part of. And so we really need to begin to include in our budgets, include in everything that we're doing, money so that we can properly pay young people for the work that they're doing. Whether that be, just speaking at a conference or attending a conference and having, the money to be able to pay for meals, whatever it may be, making sure that our young people are supported whenever we recruit them, because otherwise, all we're doing is really setting them up for failure. So I think I would just include those two things. And we at Youth First have definitely been supporting campaigns to think about how maybe, you could structure a fellowship or other opportunities that really develop some of the skills that young people need in order for them to be a part of these campaigns. But also to develop youth leadership structures, because across the country, we assume that each state maybe has youth-led organizations on the ground or grassroots community organizations doing this kind of work. And truth be told, some of them don't have the capacity to do so. So we really need to, again, sort of invest more money into that. And what better way to do that than by, as the Youth Justice Coalition also said, by closing some of these places down and investing that money back into the leadership development of our young people as well.
Yes, yes. See if we can get our next question up. So our next question is, how can adult allies and nonprofits support youth leaders and strengthen the partnership? And I think you guys have spoke a bit to this, but if you have any additions.
I mean, I would say I work, besides for the Institute, I work full-time for the Youth Advocate Program. They're actually on my shirt. It's a nonprofit organization that does a lot of various things, but one of the things we do is there were a community alternative to incarceration. Funding, and Hernan touched on it, funding is a really big thing. We have to stop thinking that, because they're with us, everything's gonna be okay. But yes, everything for that moment is okay, but we got to think about bigger picture. And what do they eat when they're not with us? Where do they sleep when they're not with us? So including funding, budget wise, and your RFPs to be able to really delegate certain funding to youth just basic needs. So the funding portion is a really big one. And I think like with the adult allies, it's keep it real with the youth. Don't ever try to sugarcoat something. Youth, I always say it, I train a Youth Thrive training. So I train DCP and P workers on a certain curriculum on how to, work with adolescents. And one thing that I always tell my DCP and P workers is adolescents, youth, we're like a dog. We have like a sixth sense for like the fakeness, right? So we feel that, or we smell that you're not being realistic, or you're not being fair, or you're just lying. We're going to smell it, whether we say it or not. So always being honest up front will really be able to strengthen the adult partnership and just the partnership with your youth in general.
Can you hear me? And another thing, doing this work for a very long time, I've noticed that a lot of our youth just want somewhere safe to be. They just want a safe place, and they want to know that they're safe with you. Because a lot of these youth come from communities that are not that safe. So they just want somewhere safe that they can be themselves. So you have to be able to create that environment for them. And if you're not creating that environment for them, they're not going to want to come be there, because they're not going to think that they're safe. And they're going to go back to the same community where they're just as unsafe. And now we have to get them out of jail because they're in an area that is not so good for them. So creating a safe place is the best thing that y'all can do.
I think also to include in that safe space, I think one of the things that I realized working prior to Youth First at the Fear Institute is that we in the adult space get caught up with the lingo and language that we use, and very rarely do we realize that our young people don't fully understand what exactly we're talking about oftentimes, or some of the issues that we're raising are so stuck in the jargon that we use that we don't actually take the time to translate that to our young people and or communicate it in a way that is actually attractive to them and that actually engages them in some meaningful way. And so I think one of the most meaningful ways that those allies can support is really taking the time to evaluate how they're putting out information from their organizations and who exactly that information is getting to. Because I know that we want to impact policymakers and other folk who have a power to make decisions, but we also need to empower our young people to know how they can push some of their policymakers to make the decisions they want to be made for them, as opposed to again having those policymakers do it all for them. And so I think as much as we can begin to regularly create communication lines where that communication is more transparent, as Crystal said, but also more understandable and easily translatable to young people, I think is something that nonprofits around the country could really do more for our young people.
Great. Any additional comments on that? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I would just say, and it's kind of to the last question as well. One of the ways we support youth at YJC is allowing youth to participate in every aspect of the organization's functioning. So all the youth, students, and the young organizers are all at the table when it comes to the budgeting process. So the way the budget is dispersed and what are we going to put the funds to what, youth have a say in that. Youth also have a say, the students themselves have a say in who's going to be hired at the high school as a teacher. So whenever there's an opening, they get to sit down and be in the interview process and have a say in who gets hired or not. And then action planning for our campaigns and everything. Young people, it's always led by young people, and it's always every part of the functioning of the organization is integrated with the youth. But I think one thing that I like what Chelsea said about building a safe space. I think that's important, especially in neighborhoods, that youth might not feel safe. It's important to have an area or a space that youth can go and just kind of be without worries of the world and stuff. And then lastly, I think something that we can do better here is building better like pathways like to success, because there's a lot of opportunities here to be an organizer, but organizing's not lucrative. It's not nothing like that. So and a lot of youth just don't want to be organizers. They want to be in entertainment industry or do other things, or maybe make money and be successful. And here, at our school, where it's technically a continuation school, and so we don't get all the resources to build like trade pathways and everything like that. So I think just building successful like pathways to different options for the future is critical. So they can, if you don't want to be an organizer, and because you have to really love organizing, then you could do this, you can do that, you can do this. So I think that's one thing we can do better. I think organizations can support youth like that.
And I would just add to that too that it's important to have the same process for all people, regardless of age. I think a lot of times we talk about dismantling unjust systems, but we rebuild those systems within our same organizations. And so being really mindful of what does it mean to have organizations that instead of being a hierarchy where you have a few usually white or very highly educated or very highly salaried people at the top making the majority of decisions, and then the people most impacted by the issues don't have much of a decision in that organization. So how can we flip that triangle and invert it, where the movement, the community has a huge say in how your organization is run? We're a member-led organization, so young people as well as other people, parents and formerly incarcerated people as well as people inside can nominate and elect their members to the board of directors. Our board is all elected, and it has to be 51% or more youth. And then we have a transformative justice process. So regardless of where you are in the organization, even if you've been here for a long time or you're brand new, if you feel like someone's treated you badly or you feel like you've been harmed or hurt in some way, or you want to bring forward some kind of improvements that haven't been listened to, you can ask for a transformative justice circle, and everybody is obligated to that same process. So it's not like you get to escape it because of how long you've been here or who you know. And I think that those things are really important to try to create the world that we're trying to envision outside of our center. How do we create that world for ourselves here?
That is a great point. I love those ideas.
And I just wanted to add one thing. In supporting youth leaders, I think one of the biggest things is just time. Taking the time to really just like sit with them and talk to them. You know, like my boss wanted one of my youth, wanted me to go do a presentation, and I was like, you know, I'm going to bring one of my youth, right? I sat on the phone with him for hours, just like having him repeat what it was that he was going to say, right? And be able to talk through it with me, right? Just so that I knew, or just so that he would be comfortable in the position that he was in, right?
Yeah.
And, you know, we think about time, and it's like we all have our agendas. We all have things we need to do for the day. Sometimes we need to be like, screw all that, you know, and let's just sit down and like talk, and let's prepare you for this, right? Because there's so many times where we want youth to be in panels. We want them to go on this trip. We want them to go on that trip. Do they have the clothes for it? You know, do they have the money to get there? Who's going to be watching their family, or if they have kids while they're gone? Right? How are they getting to that airport? You know, there's so many different things that we need to really just take the time and think about, and help walk through with them.
Yeah. Thank you for that. So I think our next question is how do you or the group that you're affiliated with address the self-healing, self-care piece? How do you address that area with the young people you work with?
I'll bring it back to what I was saying. I'm sorry, honey, and I saw you were about to talk. Time, you know, it's just really time to just not, you know, I meet with my youth bi-weekly for a youth council meeting. The day before, I always sent them like a reminder text message. Now I call them. You know, I don't just call them and be like, hey, yeah, don't forget our meetings tomorrow. I'm like, hey, how are you? What are you doing? How was your day today? How was school? How's life? You know, and really just taking the time to just sit and just talk to them. Even with adults, you know, I know sometimes my boss is always going through stuff. Every time I pick up the phone, I'm always like, how are you? And just the other day I called her, she was like, oh, da, da, da. And I'm like, how are you? She's like, no, you're right. I'm having a tough day, you know? So even us as adults, sometimes we have things that are going on. So just imagine youth. Sometimes their template, their blueprint of stuff isn't to automatically just, they talk to you. It's like, this is what's going on. They have to be asked. They have to be primed. And they have to develop that relationship with you for that to even happen, for them to feel comfortable enough to be able to talk to you. So besides that, you know, me and my boss were always we've been talking about, you know, self-care and mental health a little bit more. Is really being able to talk to them about self-care, talk to them about mental health, right? Give them the space. Am I echoing? No. Okay. Give them the space to practice self-care, right? Even if you guys are, let's say you guys are having a session, you know, the first 10 minutes, let's do a breathing activity. Let's, you know, loosen it up. Let's talk about your day, right? Give them self-care tips when they're going through things, you know, always tell them like, take a second, you know, back away, you know, breathe, take some sleep, go out with some friends, you know what I mean? Just take some time to yourself. And sometimes youth feel like they're always, you know, they're going, I can't stop. Sometimes we really do have to tell them to just stop, take a second, you know, let's do some self-care, and we still gonna be here when you're done self-caring, you know, and always reassure them that. Sometimes they feel like they can't take self-care because we won't be there if they take a week or so. That's not true. You know what I mean? We're here for our youth, right? And I'd rather them take that week burn out and take a whole month, you know? So we have to really be able to help them with the self-care and always keep that in mind.
Did anyone else have responses to that?
Justice?
Okay.
The best way that I do it, and the way that I've gotten better responses with my youth is I tell them like, I need a break. I need a break. And then they'll ask why, and then I'll be able to like break it down to them like, life happens and life is difficult sometimes, and I need a break. And I've noticed that lately they'll call me and be like, Chelsea, I need a break today. I'm like, okay, take a break. What you want? You want to come over here and hang out and watch TV and chill? or you want to go out somewhere. Most of the time they'll say, I want to come to your house, so can you cook me dinner? So majority of the time that's how it goes. But with me telling them being how busy I keep myself all the time, and I have to be reminded by my support system around me to take a break, Chelsea, I give them the opportunity for them to understand, like, I'm human just like you are. And if I need a break, we know that you need a break. So they always use that as, oh, Chelsea, you always go, but you know when to take a break. So I think that's a good place for them to understand, like, I'm just like you. I might be older, but I'm just human just like you are. And we have to take care of ourselves.
Yeah. So you're modeling the self-care. So that's a really great point. And then I think Hernan, or did you have?
I mean, I'll be brief. I think you're just like Chelsea just said, really modeling that. I know as an organization nationally, I will admit, Youth First, we're still trying to work on how to do that more effectively with the campaigns that we're working with. And I don't hesitate to admit that particular flaw because self-care and healing is grounded very much on the actual practice within an organization. And so because we're partnering with organizations on the ground, it's really about really sort of shifting the culture of some of the organizations that we work with, where some of that practice is not necessarily inherent to the organization. And so, really sharing information, sharing practices is important. But I think for all the organizations listening, if there's one thing that we have failed to do is to create a space for young people to feel like self-care and healing is an actual part of the movement in the conversation. As Crystal and Chelsea have already mentioned, people are moving at 100 miles per hour doing this work, not modeling that kind of behavior, but more importantly, not actually talking about it very bluntly in this space. And so I think one of the ways in which I've challenged this field to be more intentional about that is actually disclosing some of the challenges that I've experienced over the last 2.5 years, where I literally have now been in therapy for the last year, have recently taken on medication for bipolar 2 disorder, and have actually, talked about the fact that like 3 years ago, I was borderline suicidal and I couldn't turn to the movement for it. I couldn't admit to the movement that I wasn't doing okay, that I needed support, that I needed help, because everybody held me at a pedestal, and essentially made me feel like I couldn't be flawed in any way, like I needed to be perfect for the movement. And so I think the one way that we could do that is, individuals in these nonprofits actually creating a space for these conversations to actually happen, but also people just being much more intentional and blunt about the fact that, yeah, mental health is a real thing. And we should really start partnering with the mental health community and doing a lot of our work because we currently don't do that very effectively. And so we should do it more regularly.
Thank you. Yeah. And Anthony, or did you have something?
Yeah, just to touch off Hernan's last point is about connecting with like the mental health community. One of the things we're starting to build is a community alternative to 911, and part of that is weaning ourselves off the reliance of police and prisons and calling 911 for every little issue we have. And the goal is to build, localities across Los Angeles that are have strong networks, build strong communities, build strong networks between mental health practitioners, whether it's they're, from county, they work for the county, or do their own community type of healing, connecting people with like drug treatment type of things that aren't punitive, connecting people with peace builders, or what it's called like gang intervention workers that can build truces among between neighborhoods and build peace and provide safe passages at school for youth, and connecting people with all types of different community based I guess healing, and also just providing for ourselves our own safety, our own accountability, using transformative justice circles. So like here we have a monthly transformative justice circle practitioner thing where everyone's invited. So we get youth, we get people from across the community, adults that come in once a month to talk about these things, and we tackle different issues like patriarchy and misogyny, or how to actually build. Last month we learned about creating pods, which is like kind of like a local network of people that can support you. And but I think another thing, because we're being displaced out of our current space and the new space, we're getting a bigger space. Um, But I think one of the things we talked about having is like a maybe building like a sweat lodge there, and having it run by elders who practice ceremony. Because obviously nobody here practices ceremony. We haven't been inundated with those traditions, but we have community members that do sweat lodges, do walk the red road and things like this, so that can help the youth, help the students, help us. Maybe just do a lodge like every month at our space and bring the community. People can heal together, and I think that build a stronger community.
The other thing that's been really important for us is to prioritize safety and healing even above organizing, even though we don't get resources for it. So we take a huge portion of what we raise for direct action organizing, even though we have a tiny budget, and put that toward a peace builder for our space, so we can hold down safety and security in our space in a way that's welcoming, that's non-racist and non-punitive, and doesn't involve 911, but still lets people know that when they enter the space, we're going to hold ourselves accountable to keep each other safe, and we're also going to keep you safe. We also have about 20 different neighborhoods that utilize the building every day, whether it's for school, for work, for participatory defense, because they're going through court, because they're running programming here for the community. We have a lot of volunteer-led programming, arts and dance and everything. So we have to have peace building and transform justice in place to keep those neighborhoods from going at it with each other. And we do have people hit on each other occasionally or have fights, and so it's a way to react to the real life conflicts that exist in our community, in our neighborhoods that spill into our center and come from. We don't want to have stuff that happens in our center affect the community either, so to try to be mindful of that. We have full-time counseling here so that people can access a counselor whenever they need it. It can be family counseling. We have groups as well as one-on-one, and that's really essential. And it's led by people that have been through the system themselves, and their family members been through the system, family members impacted by violence and homicide, so that it's not the kind of counseling that we oftentimes refer people to where it's very clinical, it's across the desk, but that people that have been where you've been or are still where you are can help you get through this stuff. And then because everybody uses and learns transformative justice here, there's also a real incentive for people to use it with each other, to use it in their homes and to use it on their blocks, so that hopefully the culture we're trying to build here, we could take that back to our neighborhoods and use there. The last thing I would say is that I think for most of us, organizing really saved our lives. That when you're up against really racist, classist, dehumanizing systems, one of the best ways to heal is to fight back. And so through direct action organizing, through changing a law, you go up against a system that you were incarcerated in and it refuses to shut down a solitary confinement unit that hurts you, but then you say you go above their heads to the county doesn't do everything you want, so you go above their heads to the state, and then as young people or formerly incarcerated people, you can come back and say, now you have to follow this law, and now we're here to monitor that. That gives you a tremendous sense of healing that I think oftentimes goes untalked about.
Yeah, absolutely. So I know we have one additional question, and then I wanted to make sure, I don't know if anyone from NJJN, either Allison or Jenny, can help me with the questions, because I'm not seeing the audience questions pop up, but if there are any questions, I want to make sure that we get to those as well. And so I think we might have spoke a little bit to this final question about how can adult allies better assist youth in saying no when an opportunity could be potentially stressful or harmful to them. I think some of you all touched on this, but if you have any additional thoughts on that, I'd love to hear them, and then we'll jump right into the audience questions.
I could speak to that. Oh, I was just going to say that in my experience in watching programs and groups and organizations and advocates across the country, especially organizations that aren't led by formerly incarcerated people or families of formerly incarcerated people, what I see happen much more is that people overprotect quote unquote youth. That oftentimes they assume youth can't do things that youth are really wanting to do and are ready for. And then oftentimes think that people have to be trained for months and months and months before they can jump into the work. The best way to learn is to have people shadow everything you do. The best way for people to learn is actually practice what it is that you're doing. So every role in your organization, have a young person in that role as a like a mentee or a co-leader, so that they're learning those skills. Don't ever go to a meeting or to a hearing without young people. Encourage young people to speak even when they're a little worried about it. Because I've seen over and over again where all of us felt afraid of speaking, and as soon as we got up, we had a lot more to say than we thought we did. So I think I've seen people be overly cautious about quote unquote protecting young people, and oftentimes, even without meaning to, we're protecting the status quo, which is that people that haven't been directly impacted by these issues, white people especially, people with a lot of degrees, oftentimes say they're protecting people that have been directly impacted from getting involved. But what it does in the end is protect the privilege and the structures that we already have in place that exclude those people. That being said, I think you have to check in with people constantly. How do you feel? Are you ready? Do you feel, what else can you do to be ready? What can we do to support you to get ready? You're going to speak in a few minutes. You feel like there's something you want to do to get up there. It's scary when you go up there. Know that I'm scared when I go up there. Even as long as I've been doing it, I'm scared every time. So that people also get a lot of check-ins. And then lastly, we prep as much as we can. We never have enough time, and I don't think there ever is enough time. But we prep before every action, before every hearing, before every event. And then right afterwards, we always have a debrief right after. How did we do? What can we have done better? What do we need to do to follow up? So that people get a chance to hear what went well, as well as contribute that themselves.
Can everybody hear me? Okay. So something that I had struggled with for a very long time was when I said no, the adults didn't use the right words to encourage me to want to do it. And when I wanted to step up, they didn't use the right encouraging words behind that either. Sometimes I was told I was unpolished. They don't think that I would say the right thing, they don't think that I was the right face at the time for that situation or that event. So you need to be very mindful on how you're communicating with the kids. Like, they understand and they're not dumb. And they're able to do anything that they put their mind to. And we have to be really mindful of that and allow them spaces that they're comfortable in. Because even if we think that they're ready, they really may not be ready. And you can traumatize them. I've been traumatized before, and it's very hard to come back from. And it was to a point where I didn't want to speak. And I've seen that in other youth. And I have one scenario where one of my youth, she was so scared to get on camera, like she was scared. And I don't want to say I bribed her, but I was like, well, let's do this. I sweat every time I talk in front of people. My nose sweats and I get scared. And I feel like I'm gonna just pass out on the stage, but I always do it. And she said, like, well, you don't seem like it. I'm like, yes, because I put the face on. So now you have to put the face on, and you have to make sure that they hear what you need to say, because you tell me all the time, but I can't speak for you. Your voice is your voice. And she did get on the camera, and she did better than I did. So that was a wonderful thing to see her do. But you have to, like, encourage them with the best words ever. Don't tell them that they're not good enough for something, because that's going to discourage them, and they're never going to want to get up and do it.
I think very quickly what I would say is when I first started, I literally would take every speaking engagement possible, even if it went against school, it went against work, it went against all the time that I had. I essentially stretched myself so thin that sometimes I ended up not showing up to some of the speaking engagements that I had signed up for just because of the fact that I wasn't able to say no. And so I think one of the practices that we do need to encourage, I do agree entirely with what Kim said. We really do need to stop being overprotective over young people and realize that they have so much potential to be able to do the things that we don't think sometimes they can do. Um, but also just being very blunt with them and letting them know, like, hey, just asking them very simple questions. Is this a topic that you can speak to? Are you going to get paid for this engagement? Do you have the time to do this engagement? Do you need any prep before you go to this engagement? Like, asking them very basic questions to sort of go through a list in their mind of like, oh, well, maybe this is not the best engagement for me to participate in right now because I have a school thing that I need to go to. I have a paper due. I have other things that I need to take part in. But then also encouraging them to build up as Chelsea already mentioned, build up their other peers who might be able to do these kind of opportunities, and really encourage each other to build the leadership of their own peers. Because I do think that that's oftentimes hard, and sometimes we forget and we just take on everything because we assume we're the only voice at the table. And so we need to remind sometimes ourselves that we there are more people out there that could also participate in this. And so continuously reminding our young people that it's okay to say no. You don't have to say yes to every opportunity, but that there are also people out there who maybe could also take on that, maybe their own peers, their own friends, who they can also build their leadership with.
Absolutely. And I'm looking to see if we have some audience questions. I see one up here. Let's see, it says most NJJN organizational members may not get the importance of meeting the real material needs of youth leaders. Let's see, because of the distinction they hold between advocacy and direct service. Can the panel speak to those organizations holding those two things together? Can you break that down for them? So it looks like the question is, can the panel speak to, I guess, organizations that are doing both advocacy and direct service? And I might need, Allison, if there was any additional pieces to that, let me know. But let's see here. Yeah.
I can kick off a little bit and give some context.
Yeah.
I think that question is a question that I've been asked before at
Okay.
Youth First. And so I think part of the challenge in doing work around closing youth prisons is that because of some of the organizing advocacy efforts that we're doing, we're not always meeting the needs of young people, and yet we're asking them to do all this organizing work on behalf of these campaigns. And oftentimes some of the challenges that we've seen is that because we're not meeting those first needs that young people need, whether it's having clothes on their back, food at the table, money to pay those bills, that our young people are essentially falling out of these campaigns and are not doing well for themselves and essentially are struggling, but still showing up to our campaigns. And so I think one of the things that we've encouraged all of the campaigns that we're currently working with to do is to partner with some of those direct service organizations on the ground, some of those allies that could really provide some of those mental health supports, housing support, all of these other supports that are needed for our young people, because not every organization can do it all. And I think I would definitely love to hear how Youth Justice Coalition does this because of the networks that they're trying to cultivate. But I definitely think that we really want to cultivate those. We really want to model what we want in the world. And I think that means also cultivating the community resources that exist. And that means really encouraging relationships between the advocacy world and the direct service community, to be able to meet all those needs. And that's not going to be a perfect relationship. I think, oftentimes we are always struggling to fight for the same resources, and that's why we're not working together. But I think we really need to move towards more collaborative efforts between the direct service community and the advocacy world. And that means having a running list of people in each of these organizations that do direct service work, having a point of contact, someone that you can reach out to when one of your young people or one of the young people that you're working with is struggling, to be able to refer them to that person, someone that you trust, someone that you know is going to help them, as opposed to just having a list of just organizations that young people can go to and get some support. And it's like, well, who are they going to go to and what support are they going to receive if you don't know anyone at their organization? So I think really cultivating these relationships is very important for the overall movement, but particularly for meeting the first needs that young people need to be met as well. And Crystal, I would love to hear some of your thoughts on this because I know we've had conversations about this as well.
Yeah, so I was I was gonna say, that's kind of what my organization is going through now. We're, a campaign advocacy organization. We don't really do direct service. Me, since I know direct service and resources are very useful, I'm always going back and forth with my boss to see, regardless whether we're a direct service organization or not, how we can meet the youth's needs. Either you're doing it like you're doing it in your budget, your RFP, the release for proposal, anything that you're looking to get grant money from, that you're putting those things in the budget, right? Kind of what Hernan says, developing relationships I worked for the Youth Advocate Program, so we serve child welfare as well as juvenile justice youth. I knew that there was like a clause in the grant that we were able to give youth who worked in child welfare, employment, right? So I used that information as best as I could. And when I realized that we had a youth who was involved in the child welfare system, I was able to connect them to my full-time organization, right? But it's me having ongoing conversations, me pushing people, and really it's me like really, really, really pushing people because they have that, oh, well, we're not direct service. Well, if you're not direct service, you need to do something in the direct service world, because we need to sit down and talk to these youth. All right, well, I'm not a direct service provider. Okay, well, you need to be a direct service provider for today. And I know that doesn't always work for everything, but when we're really thinking about developing relationships with our youth, right, it takes some, and I say direct service, like us directly working with them, right? So we want to work with them when it comes to this work, but not work with them on their regular lives. It has to have some type of balance. So yes, Hernan's right, it can't all fall on us. However, there are certain resources that we could connect them to, and we can take some of that responsibility for ourselves. We can be that person that they are going through something that they could call us. All right, maybe we can't up, jump, and run, but we could be that phone call for the night. I always let my youth know I'm available to you 24/7 in case of an emergency, right? And I know Hernan's never said that to me, but that's how I utilize Hernan, 24/7 in case of an emergency, all right? And we all need to have that, all right? We all need to have that, even all the adults on the phone call. You guys have somebody that when you get a flat tire, who can you call? You need, somebody for advice in the workplace, you know who to call. Somebody for advice personally, you know who to call. We need to equip youth with those people in those circles, to be in those circles for them. And if we can't, connect them like quick enough, we need to be that person that could at least be the ear for them. But yes, as Hernan said, it's really connecting them to a person, not just a place. Not like, hey, yeah, Jennifer, I'm going to connect you to the Boys and Girls Club. It's no, I'm going to connect you to this advocate named Chelsea, who I, have had a conversation with, and I'm going to tell her that you're calling her, so it's really going full circle with that.
Yeah. I don't know if there's any other responses. I see we have one additional question in our chat box.
For us on.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Okay. For us on that question, we didn't set out to create a school, but our members demanded it because there was no place else for them to go to school. At 18, you're automatically expelled from the system or kicked out of the system. A lot of our members were getting pushed out of school much earlier, even middle school. So that creation of that school was like a huge leap for us, and I think a lot of us were very scared. But actually, it's made our organizing and our litigation and legislation work much stronger, because it puts us in touch with young people that are currently going through stuff that maybe we haven't gone through for a while ourselves. And it's important for young people to know, and for formerly incarcerated people to know, that our experience is not like everyone else's experience, that our real role should be to build hundreds of leaders, not just to build our own leadership. And so that having the school has been really essential for us in that. I think similarly, participatory defense and court support and legal clinics are really important for us. It's a way to get people in, because people first are going to reach out because they're in an emergency crisis. And so when we can help people through their court system experience, or help save them time off of their sentence, or help bring their loved ones home from prison, or help their loved ones deal with the fact that their family member was just shot and killed or injured and by the police, then that also gives them the emergency resources and support that they need to better equip them to then fight the bigger struggle, which is how do we make sure this doesn't happen to dozens of other families in the future. And so I think that emergency crisis work, as well as that support work that's ongoing for court, for school, for the counseling, transforming justice that we mentioned, is really essential. It is hard. We're a very, very, very grassroots organization. It's meant that we have to stretch things very far, small budget very far. The other thing is that all of you have space, and space in most communities is a huge So even opening up your space, we said we have this space. Our first space was just a tiny little storefront, and then we moved into a factory. It's not luxurious, so like how do we, even though we might not always have money for plumbing or electricity, or floors aren't beautiful, how do we make this space available to everyone? And even opening up your space free for people. Again, all those community events that happen, usually people are searching for space to have it in. That's a good way to extend yourself to the community and serve your community in a way that doesn't cost you a lot. And then in that way, you're also reaching out. Our organization is really part of your family, part of this neighborhood. We want to be here for you beyond just our mission statement. I think that's a really important thing that almost everybody on the call could do. The last thing is, I think that most of us could just erase dehumanizing language and go a long way to extending ourselves to the community. So in our proposals, in our testimony before the state legislature, in the legislation that we write, stop using terms like minor, ward, felon, ex-felon, ex-offender, offender, juvenile delinquent, et cetera, et cetera. If we erase inhumane language and started to see people differently, then people will start to see themselves differently. Our communities would see us differently also.
Sorry. What advice do the panelists have about providing compensation for youth leaders? What form should the compensation take? Hourly wages, stipend, gift cards? What factors do we need to consider? For example, would wages impact youth leaders who are students? That was a question.
So I'll start it off, but I know Crystal and Hernan both want to jump at this, but I just want to start it first. All of the above. You should be able to provide the youth with anything they need. It doesn't matter what it is. Stipends. That means transportation. Be able to give them bus cards. If that means you need to pay their cell phone bill, figure out a way to help them get that. If that means they need a computer or they need some type of electronic to be able to join video chats, or if that means they just need a computer for school, utilize anything that you are able to put your fingertips on to help the youth. It doesn't matter what it is. And the wages, usually you should be doing minimum wage or more. Minimum wage is not very good right now. So think about how much it costs for a person to live, to actually be able to live. I know one internship was $225 a week. I mean, that's decent for youth to be able to utilize that. So say if they need clothes or shoes, you're able to provide that for them, or send them to someone, a person, like Crystal said, a person that can give them that resource that they need to be able to get those clothes. So everything that you can put your fingertips on, give it to them.
So compensation. Can I go?
Go ahead, Crystal, and then we'll jump over to Kim.
We need to be paying our youth for everything that they do. All right. We can't be like, hey, Crystal, you want to go to this panel? And then somebody like me has to come and remind you, hey, but are we going to pay them to go to that panel? When we're asking youth to do things, just like you get paid to have that conversation and to call them and to go to that panel, the youth should get paid to have that conversation and to go to that panel. I know it all goes back to budget and RFPs and the proposals that you guys put in. So put it in your proposal from the beginning. And don't put, oh, we're gonna have a youth go to 5 of them. No, always shoot higher, right? Even if they don't make that 15, at least you have the money for that 15, right? Chelsea, I respect you 100%, but I would not stick to minimum wage. Especially, I live in New Jersey. What minimum wage is like $8.44 out here. That's like crazy ridiculous, right? I'm completely transparent. I get paid $35 an hour. All right. So even when there's been times that I haven't been able to go to or I couldn't go to something, and my boss would be like, oh, well, we don't have the funding for the youth. And I'm like, okay, so I get paid $35 an hour. So that means 2 youth can get paid $17.50 an hour to go and take my place. And then my boss was like, oh, well, where there's a will, there's a way, right? They need to be included in the conversations, but also get compensated for it. Gift cards, we just started doing gift cards. In my personal opinion, it's always like logistics and things like that. It's gift cards aren't always the most effective way because we know that there's things that you have to pay cash for, and if there's a balance left over, like they can't take it off the card or anything like that. So it really depends on your organization. I know, like, my full-time organization, we can't do gift cards because some of the youth are still on probation and they're worried about other things that the money would be utilized for. So if that ever comes into play, and if that's the reason why it's being asked, then yes, go gift card. But I always like to try to be able to do cash. And pay the youth for everything they do. All right, every single thing, any panels, everything that you're getting paid for, the youth should get paid for doing as well.
Oh, any other comments? I think, Kim, you.
I was just going to say that we've always had some young youth stipends, as well as more recently some stipends for formerly incarcerated people and family members. They don't get what I think everybody deserves. I don't think anyone here at Chucos gets what they deserve, whether it's teachers or the Transform Justice coordinators. I think being a grassroots group, we're always stretching stuff way too far. But the reason that we've always prioritized that is because of participatory budgeting. So Anthony mentioned that in the beginning. Every spring we sit down, we're like, this is the money we've raised. How do you guys want to prioritize it? The students in the school put in their priorities. The teaching team and school team puts in their priorities. The young people that are most involved in the organizing, formerly incarcerated people most involved in the organizing, put in their priorities. And then we sit down and discuss it and work it out. And that's how the budget's created. And it's not an advisory process. It's not like that's advice that some people give to other people that then go away and create the budget. Everything is put on the table. Everybody creates a budget, mindful of the work that we've said we wanted to do. We consider the money community money, not organizational money. So we try to hold ourselves to a standard or accountability where if we're not really spending this money well and prioritizing people most impacted by the issues, then we're not utilizing the community's money well, and that we have to be mindful of the victories that we promised the community we would win. And then we prioritize formerly incarcerated people. So even our teachers, our counselors, everybody here is either formerly incarcerated or has immediate family members, meaning their children or their spouses in the system, or have been, in a couple of cases, victims of homicide. So we want to bring in that voice too. The other thing I would say around prioritizing everybody is that we don't discriminate based on people's documentation status, based on people being on Social Security, based on people having other income that's coming. So I don't want to put too much out there because we're doing stuff that's contrary to federal law, but I also think F federal law when they're keeping people in poverty. So you could talk to us offline about what we do to try to protect ourselves as an organization, but also make sure that we don't discriminate against people who fall into one of those categories that the federal system or even your state system say they don't deserve to work or get compensated for what they do.
Thank you. Any other questions or any other responses to that question before we move on to our next one? All right. It looks like our next question from the audience is, how can adult allies both respect personality traits in youth, e.g. some of our youth are more soft-spoken, but also encourage them to share their stories, thoughts, and contributions, which are always excellent when shared in a one-on-one context. So I believe maybe Chelsea, you kind of touched on this point around encouragement and what that looks like. So I don't know if you have any thoughts or responses to that question.
Just like I said earlier, just be mindful of what you say and how you say it. And even it goes all the way down to the way you're sitting or the way you're standing. Never stand over top of them and make them feel less than what they are. Sit cross from them, eye to eye contact. Don't make them feel like you really don't care about what's happening or what words you're using when you're communicating with them. And remember, words of encouragement. If you need them, they're on Google. I have a whole list of them.
I don't know if anyone else has any other response to that question from the audience.
Yeah,
So,
right
Yeah.
here.
hold on.
Um, real quick. So we have something that we have something called a street university here at our high school that the YJC organizers once a week on Fridays we hold a 90-minute class with the high school students, and we learn about, we teach them how to organize, like organizing practices, but also things that they wouldn't learn in like a regular high school, things you might learn in college, things like history of oppression, and issues that affect our communities, like police militarization, police brutality, incarceration, the carceral system. And so we learn about all those things. And in the process about learning those things, it's an interactive class where we might do role playing, or we might create a comic book to explain, so students can start articulating their position in the world and what they can do about it. And so some students are more soft spoken, or some students, this might be the first time they're hearing about this, and it might not interest them. They might be, I don't want to hear about this, but just once the class becomes interactive and they start seeing themselves in these situations, in these issues, and seeing that they are have agency to do something about it, you start seeing students really become more involved and more critical about the world that they live in, and really more they become interested in the organizing that the organizers do. So I think that that's one way to that we like kind of bring in students and people of all different personalities, is by having interactive classes with them and implementing this. And one thing we're going to do, I believe we're going to be doing street university and organizing class for people in the movement on Thursday evenings. I think maybe Kim can talk about that.
Yeah, we have a number of trainings also available for the larger community. Anyone in the United States could ask for it. It's all free. One is Street University is going to be at night. People be able to earn college credit. And people mention stipends, but of course there's just a tiny group of people every year that get stipends. So most of what movement building is enabling people to get involved in the organizing by other things that they get from it, as well as their desire to change things and to be liberated. And so some of how we give back to the larger community is free courses. So about the young people here train about 2,000 other youth a year, as well as a lot of people that are family members of young people, on what to do when you're stopped by the police, on negotiating the court system from arrest through sentencing. We have a free training for school districts, and again, it's available to anyone in the U.S. on transformative justice, on the use of peace builders, and how do you build safe school climates without relying on punitive discipline or police in schools. We have a free training on how do you engage people in transformative justice processes in the community and build alternatives to 911 that Anthony mentioned earlier. So all of that's available to people, and we try to use that as a way to build up kind of the each one teach one philosophy, that if you get court support here, then how can you help a couple other families get through court? If you are involved in bringing your loved one home on a commutation package, or bringing your loved one home on an appeal, how can you help other families do the same? So that our goal is always to build new leaders and to transform people's ability to do these things for themselves and for their family members and community members. And sorry for the background noise. School came back from lunch, so now.
Oh, that's okay. Any other responses to that particular question? All right. It looks like
The only thing that I would say.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
The only thing that I would say is that youth have different forms of outlets. So if they can't speak about it in a public place, maybe they could write about it. Maybe they could do a poetry. Maybe they could do a rap. I even had youth where they want to write it down, but they don't want to be the ones to share it. So I'll share it, and then they'll see the response that the audience has. So thereafter, they'll be like, oh, okay, yeah, maybe I'll share it this time. But just because they don't want to share it or they're soft spoken, there's other ways to figure it out. Let somebody else do it. Let, art, music, other ways to get it there.
That's a great point. And let me see, are there any other audience questions? I know we're in our sort of final minutes here. All right. Well, I'm not seeing any other audience questions, so I guess in our final minutes, I want to open it up in case there are any final words that our panelists have for those who are listening in on this topic. Anything that we haven't had a chance to touch on today that you want to leave with the participants?
I would say that when you're doing advocacy, which most NJJM members are engaged in advocacy at the state level or your local county levels, all of this sounds overwhelming, but I promise you that getting young people and families involved in not only the running of your organizations, but the building of your movements will make your life so much easier in the long run, and also you'll be able to win larger and larger victories. So I think that sometimes when webinars happen or any kind of training happens, you kind of go home like, damn, how am I going to do all that on top of what I'm already doing? But building leadership in the community is a way of sustaining your work way beyond yourself, and also bringing a lot more satisfaction to your own work and to the victories you're bringing home. So I know everybody, I probably speak for everybody, that you can reach out to all of us as well. We have a lot to learn, so it will benefit us if we were in conversation with other people, because we could learn a lot from what you're doing. And for sure, we're available to help support you engaging more youth, families, formerly incarcerated people in the work. And currently incarcerated people too. We didn't talk too much about this today, but young people that are currently incarcerated, as well as adults that are currently incarcerated. Last year, we were fighting a bill that passed in California around changing the felony murder rule here. And when we reached out to our members inside with a survey that we developed around how the felony murder rule impacted them, we got 847 surveys back from people inside the state prison. When we asked them for letters for our bills, we got over 100 letters for each of the bills we were sponsoring this year from the inside. That's just from the inside. They way outperformed people in the community, including the highly paid advocates that we're in coalition with. So I just want to give a lot of love to currently incarcerated youth and adults too, who have a lot to give for this movement and aren't usually tapped into.
Thank you for that, Kim. Any other final thoughts before we? Any other thoughts? Oh,
I just wanted to thank everybody, for being on the call and always being, or on the webinar, right, and being interested on how to develop youth leaders. This is not something that any of us have just woken up and be like, oh yeah, I know how to do this. It's taken time, it's taken practice, it's taken, picking each other's ear. Me, Hernan, Chelsea, we're always going back and forth because we could always learn something. So never think that you know it all. Never think that you're above anybody. Even get, feedback from the youth. Don't be scared to get feedback about how yourself or your organization is performing. Ask them, what would you like to see? How am I doing? What can I do better for you? Right? Because at the end of the day, they say our youth are our future, but our youth are really now. And we really need to be able to help them see that, and just being able to partner with them as much as possible. And sometimes, we're going to run into coworkers, and we're going to run into other people who don't have the same vision as us. I would just say, keep fighting the fight and keep the goal in mind, right? Don't let anybody stay in the way of that. And sometimes, it takes us even having to go back and forth with our coworkers for them to really understand and be able to change their lens of their own blueprint and their own template in their minds. But it's never stopped me, and I encourage you guys for it not to stop you. And keep fighting a good fight, guys. And definitely, like Kim said, I'm open to talking to people. I don't know everything. Like I said, I want to know what you guys do. I want you guys to pick my brain too. So I don't know how the contact information would get around, but Juri, if you're open to putting out the contact info for us or for me, whoever wants to be a part of it, on the chat box, you guys are more than welcome to reach out to me.
Yeah, and we'll make sure to include Allison and Jenny from NJJ, and we'll make sure to include some of this in a follow-up when we send maybe a copy of our link to the webinar to the NJJ membership and others. So I want to make sure if there's any other final thoughts. But if not, I want to thank you all so much, all the panelists, as well as the participants for being really actively engaged today. I learned so much, and I'm excited for others to watch this webinar and for us to continue to learn from each other on this topic. So with that, thank you all again so much, and have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.